In strange Afrocentric corners on the internet, including Reddit, dead-name Twitter, and YouTube, you may come across the claim that Beethoven was black. However, is there any merit to it? No. Let's pack it up, guys. We're going home. But to over-explain it, here's the circumstantial evidence for and the overwhelming stronger counter-arguments against the black Beethoven theory. The first record of this claim was from black biracial English composer Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who supposedly posed the most unorthodox belief in an interview he held with reporter Raymond Blaythwaite, roughly around or before 1907, although, to the best of my knowledge, the written interview itself has been lost or was never published. This is according to Samuel's friend, confidant, and posthumous biographer, Berwick Sayers, who published Coleridge's biography in 1915 and 3 years after Samuel's death in 1912, meaning the attribution of this belief to Coleridge Taylor is secondhand. When commenting on U.S. segregation, the topic of Beethoven's race was brought up by Samuel, page 203 of the biography, who stated, quote, "The theory that Beethoven had colored blood in his veins. The supposition, he thought, was supported by the great composer's type of features and many little points in his character, as well as by his friendship with Bridgetower, the mulatto violinist. If he were alive today, he would find it somewhat difficult, if not absolutely impossible, to obtain hotel accommodation in certain American cities." End quote. In summary, arguing that, like Samuel himself, Beethoven was of mixed black and European ancestry. Whether Samuel wholeheartedly believed in such a wild claim, or was bitterly mocking segregation in the U.S. by using humor, it mattered little. This affirmation would be a part of his legacy, alongside his music, to the present, rightly attributed or not. Ultimately, the black Beethoven belief all comes to these questions. When and where could have African ancestry have appeared in his family line? Is there contemporary or DNA evidence? And, the most pressing question of all, was Beethoven's mom a hoe? Welcome, good strangers, to this episode of Historical Detour. I'm your host, The Guide. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on this video or to help the channel grow. Consider joining my Patreon for exclusive perks, linked down below. The generally accepted biographical and ancestral details of Beethoven is that he was of Flemish and German stock. Born 1770 in the city of Bonn in the Holy Roman Empire within what is now modern Germany, his father Johann was a musician, singer, and choir master whose father, also named Ludwig, likewise was a noted singer and music director from modern Belgium in the Netherlands, or Flanders. Beethoven's mother, Maria, came from a somewhat well-to-do family in service to the Archbishop of Trier, with origins in the German Rhinelands. There is no recorded evidence that Beethoven's ancestors were anything more than white Europeans. However, a number of theories have been crafted to explain possible black African ancestry. Theory 1, the unknown ancestor theory. The literary scholar Nicholas Reinhardt summarizes it thusly. The logic goes something like this. Beethoven's family traced its roots to Flanders, which was for some time under Spanish monarchical rule. And because Spain maintained a long-standing historical connection to North Africa through the Moors, somehow a single germ of blackness trickled down to our beloved Beethoven. End quote. Theory 2, the infidelity theory. The other theory proposed by Afrocentrists is Maria van Beethoven's supposed affair with a Moorish or African man. They claim her marriage to Johann was terrible, and to be fair, there is evidence that Johann was a physically abusive and neglectful alcoholic, so much so that Beethoven sued his father for half of Johann's income so that he and his younger siblings could properly be taken care of, albeit this was after Maria had passed away from tuberculosis. The supposed affair with a blackamoor resulted in Beethoven's conception. However, there is no corroborating evidence of this alleged affair, instead merely being proposed as an alternate theory to African ancestry on Beethoven's father's side. Scattered primary sources and contemporaries used to prove the Black Beethoven theory include descriptions of him being described as a, quote, Moorish, swarthy, ruddy, brown, etc., due to his reputed darker features. Such descriptions come from those who knew or met him personally. However, these statements are primarily used as physical descriptors rather than a direct claim of Beethoven being biracial or of mixed ancestry. Most contemporary portraits of Beethoven seemingly depict Beethoven as white, and the portrait and depiction most often used in support of the theory is a 1816 depiction created by Blasius Hofel and Louis Latron. However, for even this example, often low-quality black and white reprintings are used, making Beethoven's skin appear darker than the original. The term Moor is in fact a largely European invention to at first describe Muslim inhabitants of North Africa, who conquered and inhabited much of the Iberian Peninsula, before broadening the term to an extreme degree to include Muslims and dark-skinned people inhabiting Europe. Arab Berbers were haphazardly categorized as Moorish. However, contemporary art and contemporary accounts indeed reveal that black people were a common sight in Andalusian society, from musicians to servants and sailors. Much of modern Spain was a cultural and racial melting pot. However, despite the Spanish Habsburgs claiming the Spanish Netherlands of Beethoven's ancestors, that does not equal proof of black or even Spanish ancestry. Another point of circumstantial evidence pointed to by the Black Beethoven crowd is that one of Beethoven's residents was called the House of the Black Spaniards. However, previously the residence had been inhabited by black-robed Catholic Benedictine monks, thus the odd moniker of this house. Another cited reason to believe the Black Beethoven theory is his friendship with George Bridgetower, a biracial violinist, although the pair only collaborated briefly, with Bridgetower performing Beethoven's Violin Sonata No. 9 in Vienna before a personal quarrel arose that apparently drove them apart. Beethoven in life additionally never publicly claimed any African ancestry. The Black Beethoven belief would find renewed interest in the mid-20th century, with the Jamaican-American writer and amateur historian Joel Augustus Rogers in Sex and Race, Volume 1, The Old World. African-American journalists such as Carl J. Murphy routinely championed the Black Beethoven theory in black-centric newspapers. It is a curious collection of individuals who have stated their belief in the Black Beethoven myth, from civil rights icon Malcolm X to Pan-African activists such as Kwame Ture. Many in the Black Power movements in the 20th century U.S. championed this claim. Symbolically, such a claim would upend Western intellectual canon if true, and only add to the countercultural historical narratives which put greater emphasis on people of color and other marginalized groups that had been neglected in Eurocentric historiography. From the mid-2010s to early 2020s, there was renewed interest in the Black Beethoven debate in the US and worldwide. Debates on historical whitewashing happened on the daily. Beethoven's ancestry became a point of contention in the media. 2020 also saw a Twitter war go viral debating the Black Beethoven myth, with various opinion pieces being written in mainstream media outlets such as Newsweek and The Guardian. In late 2021, The German singer Roberto Blanco formally requested the city government of Vienna to exhume Beethoven's corpse to retrieve DNA to prove conclusively Beethoven's ethnicity. Suffice to say, the proposed exhumation was not done. The most decisive blow to the Black Beethoven myth came recently in 2023. Samples of Beethoven's hair collected late in his lifetime were tested by scientists to determine the health issues which plagued the conductor in his last years of life. Also, incidentally, allowing genetic testing, which would debunk the Black Beethoven theory. Tracing Beethoven's claimed patrilineal lineage with a high degree of certainty all the way to the 1500s, the study surprisingly found that at some point there was a genetic break in the male line, which implied a false paternity, yet still no Black or Moorish link could be found. According to one of the authors, Tristan Begg, in an interview when asked regarding ancestry, quote, "Genomic analyses of Beethoven's overall ancestry revealed that he was typical of individuals born in regions bordering northern, western, and central Europe, with the closest affiliations or affinities to individuals born in around present-day Germany, France, and the Benelux region. These analyses detected no evidence of recent substantial non-European admixture, estimating Beethoven's ancestry to be greater than 99% European." The earliest reference to this myth scholar Dominique René de Lerma in a 1990 journal article could find to this myth was the aforementioned 1915 biography of Coleridge Taylor. The reasons for this belief often provided are often conspiratorial in nature and not unique to the topic of Beethoven. European kings, queens, and royals across the globe have been claimed to be Black. Additionally, the Netflix series Bridgerton's alternative history takes inspiration from the obscure 20th century theory that George III's German wife, Queen Charlotte, had African ancestry, another theory, unsurprisingly, popularized by Joel Augustus Rogers. These kinds of Afrocentric pseudo-history have thrived and caused misinformation aplenty, often being co-opted by Black supremacist groups and conspiracy theorists. While nominally far less harmful, any writer, researcher, or historian worth their salt should know better than to wholeheartedly believe this Beethoven malarkey. However, while Beethoven's ancestry is certifiably white European, there is in fact a long history of composers and musicians with Black or mixed African ancestry creating, performing in Western Europe, including but not limited to the Tudor-era trumpeter Jean Blanc, the fencing Frenchman Chevalier de Saint-Georges, and previously mentioned one-time personal friend of Beethoven, George Bridgetower. Instead, these men who counter the false premise that people of Black African origin did not inhabit the intellectual and artistic traditions of European music and art remain semi-obscure to the public at large. Farewell, good strangers. Remember to like and subscribe, and consider pledging or donating on my Patreon to ensure a bountiful video output. Farewell.